KJA Global Channel, The Political System and Me. Series 3, Institutions, Power, Rights, and Accountability. Episode 18, My Corruption Reality, How Systems Rot from Inside. Corruption does not begin with a thief. It begins with a silence. A silence in a meeting where someone sees something wrong and says nothing. A silence in an office where a signature is sold and everyone pretends it is normal. A silence in a community where a powerful person abuses the weak and the weak learn to swallow their pain. A silence in a ministry where public money leaks like blood and the nation acts like it cannot smell it. The viewer does not encounter this first as theory, but as a condition of life. A fee that should not exist. A permit that moves only after a favor. A job that goes to connection instead of competence. A contract that is won before the bidding begins. A service that should be a right but becomes a transaction. Corruption is not only an action. It is an atmosphere. It is the moment a society quietly agrees to live with dishonor because confronting dishonor feels too dangerous, too exhausting, too costly, and too lonely. And that is how systems rot. Not only from the outside, not only through enemy invasion or visible collapse, but from the inside, through the slow death of conscience and accountability. I used to think corruption meant bribes. A small envelope. A favor. A hidden fee. A T-money request. I thought corruption was a single crime committed by a few bad people. But corruption is far more dangerous than that. Corruption is a system. This episode asks the viewer to distinguish petty corruption, grand corruption, and systemic corruption. It asks us to identify the institutional incentives and the impunity that allow corruption to reproduce. Petty corruption is the small abuse that ordinary people meet at the counter, the checkpoint, the school, the clinic, or the office. Grand corruption is the capture of major public money, contracts, land, resources, appointments, or national decisions. Systemic corruption is deeper. It is when corruption stops being an exception and becomes the operating logic of the system itself. The system reveal is institutional corruption and impunity. Corruption is the theft of the people's future in three phases: petty, grand, and systemic. In plain language, the hidden mechanism is institutional corruption and impunity. Systems rot through a cycle in which theft funds the power that protects the theft. Stolen money buys influence. Influence protects the thieves. Protection weakens investigation. Weak investigation normalizes impunity. Impunity teaches society that corruption is safer than honesty. Corruption is psychological as well as financial. It breaks the human being and normalizes the wrong things. It teaches people to say, "I need to survive. My salary is low. Everyone does it. I will stop later." But corruption rarely stays small. Small compromise becomes habit. Habit becomes network. Network becomes protection. Protection becomes intimidation. Intimidation creates silence. Silence becomes culture. And culture becomes destiny. Grand corruption steals billions and shapes national poverty. It steals roads before they are built. It steals medicine before it reaches the patient. It steals teachers before they enter classrooms. It steals clean water before it reaches the village. It steals justice before the weak can stand before the law. Systemic corruption changes human behavior. It forces good people to leave, comply, or break. It punishes integrity. It rewards obedience. It turns public service into private survival. It turns duty into a business model. And it turns citizens into customers of abuse. Rot is rarely sudden. Power becomes unaccountable. Unaccountable power attracts opportunists. Opportunists normalize small thefts. Small thefts become networks. Networks protect themselves. Protection becomes intimidation. Intimidation creates silence. Silence becomes culture. And culture becomes destiny. Federal democracy works best when power is closer and accountability is stronger. But federal democracy does not automatically defeat corruption. If local power is captured, corruption can simply move closer to the people. That is why decentralization must be joined with transparency, audit, public participation, professional standards, and real consequence. Corruption does not only rot institutions, it rots souls. It teaches children that honesty is foolish. It teaches workers that merit is useless. It teaches citizens that justice is for sale. It teaches leaders that public office is private property. Instead of stopping at the visible outcome, map corruption reality through the public money chain. Revenue, budget, procurement,
contract,
service or outcome,
audit,
public report and correction. Each arrow asks a different accountability question. Who authorized the revenue? Who decided the budget? Who designed the procurement?
who received the contract,
What service or outcome was delivered?
who audited it,
What was reported to the public? And what correction followed? A corruption outcome may begin far upstream. The visible harm may be a missing medicine, a collapsed road, an inflated contract, a ghost employee, a fake receipt, or a service that requires payment under the table. But the deeper failure may begin in an unjust rule, an unfunded institution, a hidden record, a captured oversight body, a protected network, or a sanction that exists only on paper. The chain prevents us from reducing corruption to one personality. It identifies the point where law, capacity, evidence, oversight, prosecution, or enforcement stopped working. When citizens and professionals can locate that break, criticism becomes more accurate and reform becomes more practical. For this episode, the principal mechanism is institutional corruption and impunity. The production graphic must make every link readable on a phone screen and must label country-specific or proposed arrangements honestly. Under dictatorship, corruption reality is shaped primarily by concentrated command. Information is restricted. Institutions answer upward. Challenge may carry personal risk. Public money can be hidden behind secrecy. Offices can become markets of loyalty. Investigation can be selective. And corruption can become part of regime survival. In a fragile democracy, formal rules may exist while patronage, unequal capacity, corruption, politicization, or weak enforcement makes protection inconsistent. People may expose corruption, but still fear retaliation. Audits may reveal problems, but sanctions may be weak. Anti-corruption bodies may exist, but lack independence. Courts may hear cases, but networks may still protect the powerful. In a functioning federal democracy, authority is constitutionally distributed, common rights remain enforceable, and more than one institution can question, review, or correct harmful power. No democratic design is self-executing. Institutions require capacity, integrity, public participation, professional standards, secure records, and courage protected by law. The viewer should compare who decides, how authority was obtained, whether records are public, whether affected people participate, and whether consistent sanctions and institutional correction are available in practice. Protection becomes durable only when corruption reality is converted into rules, responsibilities, records, and remedies. The minimum guardrails are 1. Clear offenses and conflict of interest rules.
2.
Transparent decisions, assets, contracts, and appointments. 3. Independent investigation and prosecution. 4. Whistleblower and witness protection. 5. Consistent sanctions and institutional correction. These safeguards work as a system. A published rule without an independent reviewer can become theater. Oversight without records cannot see. Participation without safety can expose people. And a remedy without enforcement does not repair the harm. Global relevance. The institutional test for corruption reality applies across political labels. Who decides? What limits power? What information is public? Who participates? And whether a real correction or remedy exists. Myanmar relevance. Use ordinary lived experience only where it clarifies the mechanism. Avoid turning Myanmar into dramatic background or implying that one national experience fits every society. Here is the civic practice for this episode. See and ask. Name one thing your society has normalized that is actually corruption wearing the mask of how it works. Verify. Examine one procurement, licensing, payroll, audit, enforcement, or conflict of interest record. Act. Identify one corruption pressure point and one system control. Avoid accusing any person without verified evidence, due process, and safety review. Review. Record whether you can name the responsible institution, evidence, safeguard, or remedy, and one safe next step. Protect victims, witnesses, family members, confidential records, and digital security before taking any outward step. And this is why the fight against corruption is not merely a technical reform. It is a liberation struggle. Because corruption does not only steal money, it steals the future's possibility. It steals the belief that justice is real. It steals the nation's moral spine. In the next chapter, we will confront the necessary antidote to corruption: integrity and civic virtue. How a society rebuilds trust after rot. Because it is not enough to expose decay, a nation must also rebuild character into institutions and daily life. The principle to carry forward is this: corruption is the theft of the people's future in three phases: petty, grand, and systemic. Ask yourself, what part of systemic corruption have I treated as normal even though it should be visible, answerable, and correctable? Corruption survives where silence becomes culture. Integrity begins where truth becomes practice. In the next episode, We continue with my integrity and civic virtue. Rebuilding trust after rot. Continue the playlist, use the worksheet, and keep the practice safe, truthful, and disciplined. The system shapes our lives. Our participation shapes the system.
Subscribe. Learn.
Participate. Shape the future. KJA. Knowledge justifies authority.